Hey guys, I'm super excited that you're joining me today. I am here with Lucy Milligan Wahl, and she's a professional organizer with a whole bunch of expertise in people who live in high-rise apartment complexes with little tiny spaces, and super busy professionals that have kind of collected some clutter and, disorganization and maybe hoarding and things like that. So we're going to have a really awesome conversation today, and I'm super excited that she's joining us because I'm knowing that lots of us have less space than we wish we had. And the space we have, we just don't know what to do with it. So we're going to ask all of our questions today of Lucy. I'm going to ask that you also ask your questions as well. Go ahead and jump into the comments, leave your comments and your questions, and we will jump in and we will have Lucy answer as many of them as we possibly can. We only have an hour here today. We're going to go as fast as we possibly can. I know a lot of comments have come in from you guys, and I'm going to ask her some rapid fire questions, and then we're going to just have a blast here. So thanks for joining us, and please help me welcome Lucy Wahl.
Hi,
How are
everybody.
you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you. We have Jilly Bean who says, good afternoon. Great to join you today and get some tips. So
Hello.
I'm super excited. And hi, Jilly Bean. Great to have you here. All right. So I am curious how you got started in the professional organizing business. Because if I understand correctly, you were always pretty organized. Is that true?
That is true. Yes. My dad is the one who taught me how to be organized. It was just how I lived my life. But no, I was in grad school a while ago and had lots of really smart friends and, got to see their apartments. And I was like, wait, not everyone is organized. How are people managing to function so highly when their space is in such disarray? And I realized for me, an organized space is a secret weapon. Like that's how I can keep up. That's how I can achieve at a level that other people who are smarter than me can achieve at. So that was sort of the start of like, if I can help people who are already doing pretty well in life level up, like that's pretty cool. And that level up is accessible to all of us.
Well, you started your business, LMW Edits, back in what, 2014?
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about how you started the business and then kind of its journey and where you are now.
Yeah, well, the first client I ever had was actually a woman I met on a trip. And I was just sort of like talking about what I wanted to do. And she said, when we get home, call me, I'll hire you. I'll be your first client. And there are always stories like that in small business, right? Like you need someone to believe in you, to be the first
Mhm.
one. And this woman was the first one for me. And that started the whole thing. But yeah, starting a small business is tough. And the first couple of years, I had some clients here and there. And then when I really started to take it seriously and dive in and spend a lot more energy on the business, that's when it really started to explode. And so now it's me. I have another organizer on my team, and I also have a social media manager that I work with as well.
Yay. I love to watch people that are progressive that are really killing it in business. And I think you're a good example of that. You just mentioned something that's really interesting. You said there was somebody who believed in you and that
Mm-hmm.
we all need someone to believe in us. What
Yes.
does that belief have to do with us getting started on our clutter journey?
I'm so glad you put that question that way because one of my core beliefs about home organization is that if you've never experienced an organized space on the daily, you don't necessarily know that it's possible for you. Right? I hear so many people say to me, "Well, I'm just not an organized person." And I have to tell you, organizing it's not a personality trait. Like you may prefer certain types of aesthetics, but everyone can learn the skills that it takes to get organized. It's just a matter of doing it. But we have this weird sort of perception in our culture that you're either an organized person or you're not. And that prevents us from doing something about it. And so part of my role as a professional organizer with my clients is to believe in them, to believe in the possibility for their home and to encourage them to put in the work to get there.
Awesome. I love that answer. Now I got a trick question for you. What is the difference between someone believing in you and you giving yourself permission to get rid of some of your stuff?
Ooh, sometimes you need one first and then the other. I find myself in the position of saying, what if I gave you permission? Would that be okay? And the client going, oh, I don't know. That's part of the process is sort of teaching the client to think about how they really want their life to be, as opposed to how they think their life should be. Because in our spaces, we sort of have this idea of this is what a home is supposed to look like. And I don't think that's necessarily relevant. And when I'm working with a client, I'm working on what do they need from their space? What do they need to store? How do they need access? Every project is different, right? Because it's for that specific person. So letting go of the should, giving yourself permission to customize your space to your own needs, that can be really powerful.
Well, and speaking of powerful, you just said something that really caught my attention, where you said, sometimes I see things that people need, and it may not be what they know they need. And so
Mhm.
my question is, how, if you live in a cluttered space and it's maybe a trip hazard and you don't know that there's a better way to live, how do you know that there's a better way to live if you don't know there is?
I think it's a really tough question to answer. And I think that it comes back to what I always say is my biggest indicator of success with a client. The biggest indicator that I will have success with a client is if they are willing to try something different, if they're willing to change. It doesn't have to be a huge change. It doesn't have to be an overnight change. But if they're willing to try just one little thing in a different way, like if I say, hey, why don't we put the recycle bin over here? And they say, okay, I'll try that. That is the beginning of something. And so there's a lot of a lot of times I get people talking to me like, oh, my friend really needs you, or my relative really needs you, or my mom really needs you. And my response is always, when they're ready to make change, I would love to help. But I can't do anything unless somebody is willing to adjust how they live in their homes. It's such an important factor that it's literally a question on my intake form. Because if you're
Mm.
not willing to change, I can't help you.
What if somebody's willing to change, but they have absolutely no idea where to start?
That is much easier to deal with because it's a little bit at a time, right? It's that classic question, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so you just take a little tiny area and look at it. And once you work your way through that, then that says, "Oh, I know how to do this. I can figure this out." And then you do a little more and a little more. I mean, even when I'm working with a client, I don't look at the whole room being like, "We're doing all this in a day." I look at like, where do we start? What's the little win we can get that's going to make the client feel like, "Oh, yeah, I can do this."
And how do you take a cluttered space and turn it into a functional living space?
The quick answer is you remove anything extraneous. My perspective on organizing, and I didn't necessarily have this perspective before I started my business, but overseeing so many homes over so many years, most of us have too much stuff. Whether or not you think that you have an issue with chronic disorganization or hoarding, we all have too much stuff. I have too much stuff. Like I go through my house like at least once a year, if not more often. Like we just all have too much stuff. The modern life has things coming into our houses all the time. And the easiest way to cut through all of that noise is to remove as much as possible. So when I'm working with a client, my index of suspicion is very high for every object. Do we really need this? What does it mean? What does it mean to you? What do you use it for? What do you use it with? Where do you use it? How often? Like I'm asking these very detailed questions because I want people to understand what I truly need and what I'm used to having around are two very different things.
Mhm. And I think that's true for a lot of us, because we've had something for so long,
Yes.
it's become a part of our culture. And we think that because we've always had it here, we always need it here. And the
Mhm.
concept of just because you had something in your house for 20 years doesn't mean you need to live in it, keep it there for another 20, even if you've never used it.
That's right. That's right. And there's something that our brains do called chunking. You may have heard it when it comes to numbers, like when you memorize a phone number, like you chunk the three sections of the phone number. We
Uh-huh.
chunk objects. So a pile of clutter, your brain is seeing that as one object and it's seeing it as one terrifying object. So what I do is kind of break it down into like the separate little pieces, which makes each decision lower stakes, less difficult, and working through it that way can help.
So when a customer says, I know that I need to get rid of some stuff and I'm willing to do it, what do you do when maybe the spouse says, I'm not willing and I'm not ready?
Yeah, so that I see that a lot. That happens all the time. I'm very clear about which belongings belong to which person, and I only
Mm.
work on belongings that belong to somebody who's willing to work with me. So usually that's actually pretty easy. There's obviously shared stuff, like in kitchens, most everything is shared. But usually one partner is more responsible than the other for the cooking. So in that case, the partner who doesn't cook as much can defer to the one who does. But yeah, I'm very big on boundaries when it comes to organizing. I don't believe in organizing someone else's stuff, whether they're your spouse, they're your parent, they're your child. It takes away people's autonomy and it does not make them want to participate in the process. But I have seen a lot of success with this method. It's sort of a show, not tell, right? I'm working with the one partner on their stuff. We're not getting into their spouses. And the spouse will see after a couple of sessions, like, oh, this is working. Maybe I'm going to change my mind. Maybe I do want to work with you after all. Not all the time. I'm not saying that's a guarantee, but I have seen it happen.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because my husband and I are going through something similar. And we both come from families with hoarding tendencies. And our house, I want to say our house is immaculate in that it's really tidy and everything has a place. But like if you open the closets, there's way too much stuff in there. It's all organized and we have a space for everything, but we don't need everything. And every year we go through everything and we get rid of like half of it. And then I don't know why, but it like reappears.
Oh, yeah.
And so on Saturday in the Clutter Corner group, we started getting rid of stuff every Saturday. We'd make a Saturday donation run. We do it as a group. And so I, along with everyone else, put a box at the top of my stairs. And throughout the week, when I am using something, I'm like, am I really using this? Or is this the first time I've used it in 8 or 10 years? It goes inside the box because I probably won't use it for another 8 or 10 years. And my husband would walk through and he would pick stuff out of the box. Like, oh no, I'm keeping this, And so I was like, okay, if you're not ready to let it go, that's fine. But I remember every Saturday putting it in the car, no matter how much is there, putting it in the car and taking it away. It's gone. And so one day I'm in the trunk of the car and I'm putting the box and he comes running out with a whole bunch of stuff. Wait, don't leave. Is this the Saturday drop off? And I was like, whoa, like something's happening here.
That's awesome.
Like you said, it was just kind of the osmosis of, oh, this is what we're doing now. And although he didn't want to participate, he was kind of like, it's like that jump rope game where they kind of watch the rhythm and like, okay, I'm ready to jump in now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And you're normalizing it, right? Like you're making it not such a big deal and not such a fraught thing. It becomes like, okay, if we let go of one thing, 2 things, 5 things, it's not going to materially disrupt life. And then that becomes more accessible.
Tell us about the normalizing process. That's something that some of us are not familiar with. How does that work?
Yeah. So if you've never sort of done this process of decluttering before, it can seem very intimidating and like a very big project. And so one way to break it down is to do a little bit at a time, exactly like you were saying. And I think it's helpful, especially for parents, to start doing that because then you're going to normalize that for the kids in the home. Because a lot of it's very developmentally appropriate for kids to cling to their stuff and be like, this is mine. It's part of them trying to practice autonomy, trying to, exercise some control in a world where they have very little control, right? And so often I will see parents go, okay, well, I can't take anything away from my kid because this is really important to them. So that's why I say normalizing getting rid of stuff in your life, and they will watch that, and then it will seem less scary in their lives. I always tell my parent clients, I'm like, just model what you want them to do because, we all know if you've ever sworn in front of a toddler, they're going to pick that right up. So, yeah.
So what about people who hang on to stuff because they think, well, I'm going to need it someday?
Yes, the just in case. So I think that there is power in removing unknowns. A lot of the just in case fear is fear of the unknown. I'm going to wake up one day and be ill-equipped, and that's scary. So in order to remove those unknowns, I ask a lot of questions. So the first question is just in case of what? What's the scenario that you would need this for?
Oh, that's
and a lot of times people can't say that, right? And that's an immediate trigger like, oh, maybe I'm not really thinking this through. And just in case of what? Okay, so say we have a scenario, just in case of this scenario. Okay, how likely is that scenario to occur? And everything is a trade-off in this life. There's no right answer. You could get rid of something and then the 1 in a million situation which you would need it occurs. That could happen. Everyone has a different balance that they're going to strike. But I think it's important to really put a label on that and say, I have decided to keep this thing, even though there is very little chance that I will ever need it. And as long as you know that and you made that decision, I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is making the decision by default because you didn't want to think about it. So it's just in case of what? How likely is the situation to occur? If the situation does occur and I did get rid of this thing, do I have anything I could use instead? So thinking
That's
about
good.
possible substitutes, because you have a limit for the amount of storage that you have in your home. Everyone does. And I have been in some really big houses. They also have a limit. And you cannot keep everything. And as many people know, if you are trying to keep everything just in case, when that just in case occurs, you can't find the thing. So then you might as well not have kept it in the first place, right? So it's getting very, very granular about exactly what you're keeping and for what reason.
And I love that because I know that in going through some of my own stuff, I have 3 sewing machines in case of what. And I used to sew a lot. And so,
Yeah.
like, it was like my thing. I was gonna grow up one day and become a fashion designer, and I never did. I became a house cleaner instead. So there you go. But I was hanging on to these sewing machines just in case. And so as I went to get rid of them, my husband says, "Well, what if we have some altering we have to do? Let's save it just in case." And then I realized, and I had to go through this exact process that you're talking about, where
Yeah.
I had to walk myself through in the event that I have pants that need to be altered or whatever. What am I most likely to do? I'm most likely to outsource it to someone else that does this all day, every day for a living. I don't have time. Second of
Yeah.
all, my eyesight is not what it once was. And so to like see the little tiny threading of the needle and to watch the little stitches and everything. Yeah, I've got reading glasses and I can magnify it a little bit, but I don't have the same desire, the same patience, the same anything that I used to have. So is it really possible that I'm going to need not 1, but 3 sewing machines? And the answer is absolutely not. How many do I need? Should I save 1 just in case? Well, am I ever really going to use it? The answer is probably not. So let's get
Yeah.
rid of it because I've been saving. In order to have the sewing machine, you got to save all the thread, you got to save all the
Yes.
bobbins, all the needles, the scissors, all the stuff that goes with it. And in making that one decision, it allowed me to get rid of all the fabric and all the extra stuff that was
Yes.
considered a craft, you know.
All the accessories. Yes. I love I love what you said about you used to be really into sewing. I see a lot of that with crafts, with hobbies, with athletic activities, where people are keeping the equipment from a hobby that they used to do and don't do anymore. And letting go of who you used to be can be really tough. And organizing stuff brings this stuff up. And so my thing with my clients is I'm like, well, either you don't do it anymore, which is
Mhm,
totally fine, and we'll get rid of the stuff, or you kind of wish you still did it, in which case, let's make a plan for you to re-engage. Like, let's pull
mhm.
the stuff out of the garage, bring it back into like your regular living space, make this a part of your life, because if it's important to you, let's make it possible for you to reincorporate.
I love that. Hey, while we are saying hi to some of our friends here, if you have had a hobby that you once used or you once did and you had crafts or something and you're not using it anymore, put a link in the comments below because I'm curious to know what your hobby or your thing was that you're not doing anymore. I want to say hi to V. Kasser. Good morning. Drowning in clutter here. Looking forward to this. You are not alone. And thank you for joining us
No.
today. AY says, hello, and thank you for this opportunity to learn. Hello and welcome. We're so glad that you guys are here. And you know what? You're not alone. This is something that I cannot tell you how many people are dealing with clutter at just various levels. And I
Oh, yeah.
cannot tell you, and I love Lucy's focus here, speaking to high achievers, because I can't tell you how many high achievers there are that they go, 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 and they give, give, give to everyone else. And then they get home and they're like, "Oh, I'm so exhausted. I just don't have time to do it for myself."
Yes. I would say, sometimes it looks like someone who's very successful has it all figured out. I am here to tell you that people struggle with clutter across the entire spectrum of, jobs, socioeconomic status, everything. This is something that a lot of people are struggling with. I mean, I just did a consultation for a wonderful client in a very wealthy suburb, two highly competent professionals with 4 kids. And as I was leaving, she ran out the door after me and she said, "You just have to tell me, how bad is it?" And my heart broke because this is somebody who's like so smart and feels like they should be able to figure this out. And they feel terrible and like they're the only one that's struggling with it. And I am here to tell you, like, modern life is tough. People do not have this figured out. That's why I'm here to help.
Another side of this that we don't talk about, and this is in the online creation world. I've been a content creator for the last 7 years. We do lots and lots and lots of content and shows and podcasts and all this stuff, but there are a lot of brand deals that are done. And so people will send you products for free, and then they hope you evaluate them and review them and things like that. And I cannot tell you, I'm in a thicket right now with a whole bunch of other content creators where they have gobs of stuff that have been shipped in from brand deals. And so then they did a review about it, and now they got like 5 or 6 of the same item, but it's brand new. It's a great item, and they reviewed it and they loved it, but they got 5 or 6 of those items, so they don't want to get rid of any of them. And in all fairness to the client, if the client calls them again and says, hey, can you give me another review or whatever, they don't want to get rid of the item. So now they're stuck with all this stuff, and it's piling outside, up the walls of their house in boxes, and it's piling out into the other rooms, and they're tripping on it. It's not organized, and it's just a mess.
Yeah, that's so frustrating. I also see that with people who participate in sort of multi-level marketing companies where you need to purchase the inventory and store it yourself in order to sell to your customers. And that's a tough one. And I've had a couple clients with that sort of struggle. And it's kind of fun sort of figuring out like, okay, this company is just like sending so much stuff at you, and they're sending you marketing materials and ideas and bring this to your party and send this to your people, and sort of helping people like focus in on what works for their business and what they can just sort of let go, because the company is going to send you more things than you could ever possibly dream of using.
Well, and it's interesting for the brand deals that we've been working with, for people that are brand deals, we're asking right now, once you've made the B-roll, can we archive that B-roll so you can use that B-roll again without hanging on to the physical, tangible object? Or can you request from the brand deal that once I make this video, I can do a giveaway, and because this was the special item or whatever that we had, that we can then give that away at the end, like, hey, this is the product I used in this video, and then give it away and get rid of it. So
yeah, that's a great solution.
And it's with permission. I know for a fact that in my business, when people send us stuff, they sign a release that says we can give it away. And so my first go-to is I give it away to staff, and we have, giveaways in our office where team members can say, I want that, I'm going to speak for that or whatever. Or then we give it away as we have what we call Lousy Prize Monday. So on Monday, we pick random things that people sent us, and we give them away to somebody who picks the highest number or whatever. So there are different ways of getting rid of it, but, so we've got a couple comments that have come in here. People are giving us their crafts, LOL. Like, they're not crafts. These are like lifestyles, right? B. Casser says, I have a gazillion cross-stitch books and several half-finished projects, but hubby has an entire spare bedroom full of his stuff, so can't craft anymore. Help us understand that. What happens when somebody who loves to craft has been overtaken by another person in the family who also loves to craft and has taken over that space?
Yeah, that's tough. What that says to me is there's a need for a conversation about what people are really loving to do and how you can work together to accommodate that in one space. I think what I see in my work is people seem to not want to take the time to sit down to talk about very mundane things. It's kind of like, we're all working, we're trying to raise families, we're trying to do things. Like, I don't have time to sit down and talk about where my stuff goes. It seems irrelevant. But this is the kind of stuff that can start like relationship issues, honestly. Like, it can start conflict. It can stress you out. I could see in this comment, this person is hurting a little bit, right? Like, I want to be doing my craft and I feel like I've been overtaken and I don't know what to do. So, and whether it's bringing in a third party, like an organizer, like, hey, let's bring in an organizer and organize our spare room. Or maybe it's like bringing in a therapist, like, hey, let's have a conversation. Or maybe it's just like you sit down and go, hey, like, I know you love your hobby and I love my hobby. How can we work together to figure out how both of our hobbies can coexist in our home? And I love this phrasing that I've heard from Joshua Fields Milburn, who's one of the minimalists. And he says, the phrase I use is, would you be willing? So instead of, I can't figure out what to do, get your stuff out of here, it's, would you be willing to talk to me about where our stuff is being stored and how we can share this space for both of our hobbies?
Oh, I love that. That's so great. Catherine says, Was huge into flower arranging and saw potential in every item, hence so much stuff. You are not alone, hence
Oh my
so much
goodness,
stuff
you're
for
not
all of us.
alone. Yes,
That's
the
true.
potential, the creative mind. I have so many clients who are so creative and they see the beauty in everything, right? And like for me as an organizer, I'm trying to teach people to differentiate between I can see the beauty and appreciate it, and I need this for my project. Like those
Mhm.
are two very different things. And there's some sadness in that, right? Because for a creative mind, you want to think that you can do every project that comes to mind ever. But the fact is, we are human, we are limited. We're limited by our space, we're limited by our resources, we're limited by our time. So, what are the projects that truly fulfill you, and focus on the stuff that you need for those projects, but also focus on appreciating the things that you don't necessarily need to bring into your home. I mean, I remember talking to my 7-year-old niece about this once. There was something, it was like a pinwheel or something in a toy store. She was like, it's so pretty. I need it. I need it, Aunt Lucy. I need it. And I said, well, yeah, it is really pretty, but do you need to own it in order to appreciate that it's pretty? Like we can just stand here and look at it for a
Mhm.
little bit and enjoy it.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have
Mhm.
to come home with us.
Mhm. I love the concept of window shopping, and it never
Yeah.
really occurred to me until, I don't know, many years after I was married, because I grew up in a home where everything that we had fit inside a milk case. Each of us kids, I'm one of 19 kids, and so mom and
Wow.
dad gave us I know. Mom and dad gave us each one milk case, which was like 4-gallon milk case,
Yep.
and everything I owned fit inside that. So as soon as I moved away from home, I was like, "Whoa, I can buy whatever I want and no one can stop me." And it wasn't until many years into the marriage that the thought occurred to me, just because it's on sale doesn't mean I need it.
Yeah.
And whatever I need, it's going to be on sale again and again and again and again throughout the course of my life, and styles will change, and I'll just buy whatever the latest style is at the time I need it, instead of buying it and hoarding it now because it's on sale right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you leave the store at the store. The store will be
Mhm,
there. You don't need
mhm,
to make your home the store.
mhm. Well, but here's the thing, and I started thinking in terms a little bit differently. But if you have an addiction of some sort, there becomes a reality at some point where you're like, "Hey, I don't want to live that life anymore, so I'm going
Yeah.
to make a radical change because I want a radically different result." And so we stop doing that thing. Some people call it cold turkey. Well, for
Mhm.
me, the cold turkey was, I'm not going to go inside the stores. I'm not going to
Mm.
go inside the stores because I don't want to go in there. And then as I'm walking around, I run into something that I'm like, "Oh, I gotta have that," when I didn't need it 5 minutes ago. But now I can't
Yeah.
live another 5 minutes without it, right? And so then I'm guilty of impulse buying. And so just saying, I don't need it, and I can send someone else to the store with a shopping list, and it's cheaper for me to have them go buy, even if it's not on sale, buy what it is I need, than for me to go in and try to find the deals myself, because
Mhm.
I always end up with a whole bunch of other stuff that I didn't need, and now I overspent anyhow. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's down to it's a trade-off, right? Like what's the trade-off between the deal you're going to get versus your time and potentially buying more stuff that negates the deal? Um, just because it's a deal doesn't always mean you won, kind of.
Mm.
But yeah, I always tell people you will shop again. There's no world in which you go on a in the sort of beauty and skincare community, they call it a no buy. There's no
Yeah.
way you're going to have a lifelong no buy, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not realistic. And
Mhm.
so it's about learning your own patterns just as you have, and then figuring out how to structure your life so that those patterns work for you, not against you. And that's why I do not recommend having a wholesale clean out done while you are not present, unless like this is truly a health and life threatening situation. Because I have found that when my clients say, I just want to get rid of it and start over, they're not going to learn anything. You
Got
learn
it.
so much by going through your clutter, doing the sorting, doing the categorizing, looking through things, being confronted truly by how much you have in certain categories and maybe how much you need in other categories, honestly. You get the full picture and you're able to make an informed decision, and you can see exactly what your habits have caused, and then
Mhm.
you will have more incentive to actually change your habits. So for example, for a client who, like, I'm organizing a home office and there's just like reams of paper, all different colors, all different kinds, but it was stored in all kinds of different places, so they didn't realize and they kept buying. So
Mm.
now we have it all together. We're sorting it out and they can see for themselves. And there's that click in their mind. They go, oh my God, I don't need to buy paper. So then it becomes easier to say no to the deal on that cute stationery next time they go to like the store or whatever.
So is the key to organization to categorize things in a certain way that helps you make those decisions better? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, the key to organizing is to organize things in a way that makes sense to you. So you'll see like pretty pictures and TV shows and stuff where they'll be like, okay, here's where we put all the, pens, and here's where we put all the socks. And some people don't think like that. Some people think like, I need my whole outfit on one hanger at one time. And some
Mhm.
people think like, my office supplies need to go in the kitchen because I'm sitting to do my bill paying at the kitchen counter. It's about the categories and the organization that make sense for the way you move through life, and thinking about the quantity that you need for your own life. So
Mhm.
there's no one right amount of things to have, but questioning that amount is a healthy exercise to go through, especially if it's taking up a lot of space in your home.
You said something a couple minutes ago about there's no, I forget the terminology you used, but there's no buy of something.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking in terms of specifics. Because, for example, lipstick, for example,
Mhm.
is one of those things that I don't know why I just bought a whole bunch of different colors because I don't know. I thought I needed a whole bunch of different colors, but I found myself only wearing one color, only ever wearing one color. And so then when I became consciously aware of that, I could give myself then permission to stop buying all the other colors and then to stop, to get rid of all of the other colors because even though they're new or I don't know, they're close or whatever, like I'm not going to run out when I get close to running out. I'm going to go buy another one of the same shade. It's my
Yeah.
favorite shade. I like it the best. I'm not going to be wearing a dark bright red. It's not my style. It doesn't fit
Yeah.
in with what I'm doing. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to wear a burnt orange or something. It's just I'm just not.
Yeah.
So let me realize that the no buy for me is the no buy of the different shades and the different styles that I know I'm never going to use. But I do know I'm going to use lipstick again, and when I run out, I'm going to buy the same shade again and again. But I'm not, unless something changes, I don't need all the other shades.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely an important realization. And sometimes it takes a little trial and error to get there. And I'm very empathetic of that. People have kind of a lot of shame about having gone through this type of process of like maybe overbuying something and then realizing that was not a great decision. And I always say, don't worry about the past. Like you had the experience, you learned from it. We can take something from that. It doesn't mean that you failed.
Mhm.
So when I'm organizing and people are like, oh, but I bought it and now I feel like I should keep it because I spent this money, and that's okay. We learn from that. That's a learning experience that can help us grow and move forward.
How do you help people remove that shame? Because there's a whole bunch of shame associated with, oh, stuff
Mhm.
that I bought that, shame at a weird level. Like people will buy stuff and it still has the tags on it, and then they run go
Mhm.
hide it in their closet so that when they finally wear it and someone's like, oh, is that new? They go, oh, no, no, I've had it for a while. And there's all this weird shame that's built up around instead of just saying, yes, I bought myself this, I deserve it, and it's lovely. And, you know,
Yeah. Different people's style is different. As an organizer, I'm very straightforward, and the clients that I attract tend to value that. I don't, a client who needs to be very gently held might not be the best fit for me personally, but there are definitely organizers out there who would be a good fit. For me, it's about bringing the unknown and the hidden into the light.
mm,
Let's talk about it. I'm not going to judge you in this moment. Just tell me what's going on. Tell me when you bought this, what you bought it for. Has that occasion happened? Is it going to happen soon? If we get rid of this, is there something you could replace it with? It's just having the conversation. And the more objects we have the conversation about, the less uncomfortable it gets, because then you're like, it's just a thing. Whether it has a tag on it, whether it costs a lot or a little, it's just an object. It's not going to hurt me. It doesn't reflect my worth as a person. I mean, I can't tell you how much more empathetic I have become as a person since doing this work, because
mhm,
you just understand that people are struggling, and it your stuff doesn't define you.
mhm.
It doesn't make you any better or any worse.
What advice would you give to someone who is working through those exact same issues with family members?
Mm.
So family members are buying these items and then hiding them and storing them in weird places around the house so that they can eventually wear them or bring them out in the open without being confronted or being shamed or feeling like they spent money that they didn't have or that they didn't deserve or something like that.
That is a really hard situation to be in as a family member, and I have to tell you there's not a lot you can do other than protect your own boundaries. Because
Mhm.
like I said before, if that family member is not willing to talk about it, not willing to change, you can't force them, you know? And even if you do a big clean out or something, that's not going to fix the root cause of the problem. And so I encourage my clients to create their own boundaries and speak about those boundaries and let that be protecting themselves. So, for example, I have a lot of clients who are sort of on the younger side, like maybe late 20s, early 30s, and I live in San Francisco. They've moved to San Francisco for a job, and their families live back home, maybe in a suburb, maybe in a bigger house, and their families miss them. They really miss them. They want to show that they love them, and they send them presents all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. It's a way to show love, but the children feel overwhelmed. They're like, I live in a tiny apartment in a city. I don't have space for this stuff. And so I just encourage them to say, like, thank you. I know that you love me. What I'm gonna have to do when you send me stuff is I'm gonna have to donate it because
Mhm.
I can't store it. It's not physically possible. And that's a tough conversation to have with a parent, right? That's tough. It's tough to say, like, thanks, but no thanks. But that's setting your own boundary. And then the parent can choose to do what they want with that information. Some parents choose to keep sending, and that's fine. You can't stop them. And some parents will choose to have a conversation about a different way that they can convey their love. And if there's anybody watching or listening to this who is that parent and feeling attacked, please don't feel attacked. I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to show that you love your child. And my tip is take a picture of the thing and text it. And then the response will tell you whether or not you should pick it up. So text a picture. Hey, I was thinking of you. I saw this thing. It made me laugh. And if your child texts back, oh my God, I have to have it. There you go. And if your child texts back, oh, haha, thanks so much. Love you too. Nope, you can pass.
I think that's really an important conversation to have. And the reason being is I was the child. And
Mm.
my mother from 2,500 miles away wanted to let me know she loved me. And my mother collects these little angel cherubs that are made of ceramic or porcelain or whatever.
Mhm.
And so I have no idea where she got them from, but every once in a while she would mail me across country these little ceramic cherubs that I don't collect cherubs or anything. And they were beautiful, I'm guessing, but I never knew because when they arrived, they were always broken due to mishandling at the post office. And so she would send me things like cupcakes, which were full of sugar, and I didn't eat the sugar. And then these cherubs that ended up always broken. So I would get to the post office and I would literally open the package and I would chunk all the pieces of ceramic. And then I would give the cupcakes to the mailmen that were working at the counter. So every time they would have this box of rattling stuff, they go, Mom sent us some cupcakes. I'm like, yes, she did. Let's open them up and we'll chunk the ceramic and off we go. And I had to tell my Mom, I appreciate what you're trying to do. And I was trying to set boundaries, but not because I didn't want the stuff. It was because I didn't want her wasting the money to ship it because it was really expensive for her to ship it. And it was never arriving as it was intended. And I said, what are you trying to do here? And she said, I'm trying to connect with you. And I said,
Yeah.
let's make a change and let me just call you once a week and we'll have a conversation instead of you trying to ship expensive stuff to me that never arrives the way it's intended. And she's like, well, do you
Yeah.
have time for that? And I'm like, I don't have time for that, but you're my mom and I want to connect with you as well. So let's make time for that. And you know what? It's weird because we were never close. We didn't even get along when I was growing up. But my mom to this day has become my best friend. And so in the last 30 years, we've talked at least 1 hour a week for the last 30 years. And it's just delightful because like she's on my calendar. No one can interrupt that time. And we've agreed during that conversation that we can both multitask. So I can dust my house while
Ah.
she's dusting her house and we'll both be on the call while we're both kind of like doing busy work around the house. So it's wonderful. We kill two birds with one stone and she stopped sending me the cherubs and the cupcakes.
That's amazing. No, I love that. That's a great use of a term we call in the organizing industry body doubling, where
Uh-huh.
like someone is able to focus on something if they know they're being observed. So I will sometimes do it
Ah,
for clients on Zoom. I'll just get on Zoom. We'll have the video on. Like, we're not even necessarily talking. We check in at the beginning of the session. What are you going to work on? Okay. They bring the stuff, they work on it. I'm there. Because so much of getting organized is like actually doing it.
mhm,
It's kind of like anything else in the personal development space, like whether it's health, whether it's fitness, we all kind of know what we should do. It's the doing it that's the hard part.
mhm. All right, so walk me through that. Let's say that somebody calls you and they hire you and they wanna do a session, and they're gonna do this body doubling thing. How does that work?
Yeah, so when I do virtual organizing, basically we'll talk on the phone first, get a sense of what they want, what they need, and then when we get on Zoom, basically I'll have them show me what's bothering them in the space. I'll ask some questions to get some background about like, how did we get here? What do you want to have happen from this space? Tell me a little bit more. Like, I see this on the shelf. Tell me more about that. Like, I see this pile over here. Tell me about that. And then I can sort of put together like, okay, here's what I think we can get done in the next like half hour or an hour to make the client feel like we've really started something. And I'll say, all right, here's the assignment. You're going to take this pile, bring it over here, sort it with like, and then you're going to decide what you're going to keep. I'm here if you have any questions. I'll be on video, but they can go to it. And some people just kind of like do it. And some people are like really want to have their hand held through the whole process. And I'm okay with either. And then at the end, we sort of wrap up and look at what you got done. I think that's a hugely important part of organizing, right? It's like to turn around and look at the space and go, you did this all by yourself. And it was it was hard, but you did it. And then we sort of talk about, is there anything that you feel like you can accomplish between now and the next time we meet?
Mhm,
Because it's important to keep the process going. And a lot of my clients ask for homework, both virtual and in person. Most of them don't do it. That is totally fine. Totally fine. But just talking about it, we're back to
uh-huh,
normalizing. Like, this is part of your week, like
yeah,
going through your mail, putting away your laundry, like it's part of your week. And that reminds me of something that I've been saying to a lot of people recently, which is there's no world in which you don't have to do these tasks. Like, the
uh-huh,
laundry has to get done, the dishes
right,
have to get done, the mail has to be gone through, and letting it pile up is only like hurting you, right? Because the options are you do it, someone in your household does it, you pay someone to do it. That's it. Those are the options, right? There are no other options. And I think sometimes in the back of our minds, we have this idea that there's a like level of adulting that I can get to where I
mhm,
won't have to deal with this anymore. It
mhm.
it, it doesn't exist.
Well,
Unfortunately, I wish it did.
as a small business owner, I ran into the same thing because I thought one day
Mhm.
I'm gonna get to the point where I know it all, and then I won't have to keep learning new things for my business. That has not
Haha.
happened in 32 years, right?
Nope.
And it's like what you said, there's never a world in which you won't have to clean or you won't have to declutter or you won't have to organize. There's no
Yep.
world. And I think we're at an interesting place right now in history. And I want to really pay attention to this for a second because since the pandemic, we have had gobs of people. And I think it was the stay at home mandates that kind of tripped everything because people were at home and they're like, I have this scary room. I should like open the door and go in there. And people
Yes.
started paying attention for the first time that I do have too much stuff. And then along with the online shopping craze that kind of like became part of our normal everyday living, and then people doing the DoorDash and stuff, and then they weren't going out as much. So that even laid on more of I'm at home in all this stuff kind of an awareness that we are realizing right now that something needs to change. And so there's a question here that's really an interesting question, and I'm hoping we can find an answer for this. Jilly Bean says, "What about the shame that others buy things for you that they know you don't have a lot of money to buy, but how do you get rid of those?" And it is a struggle, and that is a question from a couple different points because I know that my family will buy things for me and they don't have a lot of money. And so they spend a lot of money and then I don't feel like I can get rid of it because it was a gift from them and they spent money they didn't have trying to make this beautiful sacrifice or whatever. How do you deal with stuff like that?
That is really hard, and I have a lot of empathy for that as well. That has definitely happened to me. I think, having the conversation about, what really means the most to me is being with you, you
Mhm.
know? just like you were talking about the phone call with your mom, if someone is trying to connect with you, being like, hey, can you give me an experience with you instead of an object? So, even, and this is hard, right? When someone's on a budget, but can you take me out to lunch or breakfast? Because that's like less expensive. Or can we go get coffee together? Or can we plan to see a movie together? Encourage your loved ones to give you experiences rather than things, because then at least you'll know you're getting something out of it and you won't feel like they're literally wasting their money. And figuring out how to pour back into them in the same way, so that it doesn't become about stuff. It becomes about quality time spent together. And sometimes people are not ready to hear that. That's okay. It can be an ongoing conversation over time of like, thank you so much. What I really want is experiences. Like next time a holiday comes around, I'd love an experience with you.
I think that's really encouraging, because for this year, and I know specifically 2023 is a year that in this group, we've been trying to have more honest conversations about how am I feeling, and am I okay with those feelings, and how do those feelings translate into my relationship with you and the stuff that we have collectively between us. And it's a tough conversation because some of the conversations are uncomfortable. And I
Yes.
think the key that you mentioned earlier was normalizing it, so that it's not such a weird, scary thing like, oh, we can't bring this up because it's one of those heavy topics. It is,
Yeah.
but if we just bring it up and it's a normalized topic, like, hey, this is something we got to talk about. And I loved your concept of, would you be willing to have that conversation with me? You mentioned something earlier that I wanted to not skip by, and I skipped right by it. You mentioned at some point bringing in a therapist or working with mental health counselors. At what point does that happen, or at what point would you recommend somebody working with somebody?
Yeah. So I recommend it when you get to a point where you can't have productive conversations about, and this is just from the perspective of organizing. So if I saw, say, a couple who was unable to have productive conversations about the space, and I've had couples sort of get into it in front of me, which is, not fun, not fun for them, not fun
Awkward.
for me, and I do not ever suggest therapy for somebody. I think that's way outside my scope. I am an organizer. My job is to work with this stuff. However, my perspective is, if you're not having productive conversations anymore, that's the time to bring in a mental health professional. And part of the reason that in my business, I don't work with people who have diagnosed hoarding disorder is because that should always be done in partnership with a mental health professional, because it's more than just the stuff. I, as an organizer, am not qualified to handle that. And I think if you are thinking that you need some higher level help with hoarding disorder, I would seek out mental health professionals that are well versed in that, and don't depend on just like a junk lugging service to deal with it, because they won't have the expertise to sort of support you in the way that you need to be supported.
I think what you just said is really important in the sense that if you were going to become an athlete, you would go hire an athletic coach that specializes in the sport that you wanted to learn. You wouldn't just go to an athletic store and say, hey, can you guys give me some tips? You know what I mean? And that would be like the junk removal service. You would go to a specialist that specializes in that sport. And there are world famous people that are top of the level athletes, and they still have a coach. And so when we talk about therapists and we talk about mental health professionals, sometimes there's a stigma of people thinking, oh, I must be broken in order to go seek help. That's not the case at all. And I want to stop for just a second, because this is a really important point that you just brought up. When you go get help, it doesn't mean something's wrong. What it means is you're looking for a specialist that specializes in the area in which you want to excel. That's it. That's what we're doing. And so if that's not your specialty, and the weird thing is this is the weirdest thing. You look at people like Michael Jordan, for example, who was at the top of his game, and his coach was nowhere near his level of expertise, nowhere near it. Yet he had a coach every single step of the way. Those were people that would just give him feedback, that would give him encouragement, that would help him be his best version of himself. And I think that's the real key. When somebody is looking for help and they hire someone like you, or they hire a therapist, or they hire somebody that's a specialist in a particular area, that person is their accountability partner. And you made a really important point here a couple minutes ago where you said, I don't even have to say much. But if I'm watching them on screen and I'm watching them as they put their stuff away, they're accountable to me during that session. And then I give them homework for the next time. And I think that's really, really important that people understand the distinction that in order for you to go get help does not mean you're broken. It does not mean you're helpless. And it doesn't mean that you should be shamed in any way for seeking help. The world's top professionals have mentors and coaches and counselors and therapists and people that help guide them through the varying levels of ebbs and flows of life. Because life is tough for everyone across the board
Yes.
at every, like you mentioned, every socioeconomic level.
Yes.
And clutter and disorganization is not something that is to a specific group of people. If it were,
Correct.
that would be easy.
No, I've had clients from all the walks of life you could possibly imagine, every religion, every orientation, everything, and it's universal. And sometimes people are reluctant to get help with home organizing. And you probably see in all of your years of experience too, with cleaning as well. People are very reluctant to hire house cleaners because they feel like this is something I should be able to do. And I always say, well, you are perfectly able. You are able to clean your own house. You are able to organize your own house. The question is, do you have the bandwidth? Do you have the skills you need? Do you have the energy? If you don't have those things, get some help. There's no shame in getting help.
Well, and I think part of it is sometimes we see things through our own filter.
Mm-hmm.
And having another set of eyes that's looking at it from a different filter is going to give us a completely different perspective. And I know, for example, it's so easy for me to go in my husband's closet and go, all these things have to go.
Yep.
But in his closet, he has a different perspective. And like you said, respecting his perspective is part of the, creating boundaries. I can get rid of my own stuff and not his stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really important to understand that that extra set of eyes sometimes can make all the difference in the world when that person is willing. My question to you is this: how do you approach a situation when somebody may be willing, but they don't know if they're willing, and you know that something has to change? I know this happens with like a lot of couples that maybe they don't have a space, but they have like a new family member coming to live with them, or they have an elder parent that's going to be moving in on top of them or something like that. And they have to clear stuff out in order to make room.
Yeah, it's about trade-offs. It's always about the trade-off. So when I work with clients like that, I'm like, okay, we have the goal in mind. The goal is to clear out this room, say. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to go through everything in that room. We're going to do what I always do. We're going to sort it, categorize it, and look at it. And every decision that you make is going to get you closer to or farther away from that goal. And if it's going to take you farther away from that goal, we're going to talk about what we're going to have to do to make up for that, because this is the goal. I can't bend space and time. So the reality is there are going to be some tough decisions, but it's in the service of this goal that is important to you. And that's why it's always very important to me to understand what the client's goal is. And I just want it to look nice is not a strong enough goal to get somebody to change, right? It's like, it's got to have an impact on their life. It's got to make life easier. And that's why when I talk about getting organized, I talk about making everyday life easier as opposed to talking about what it looks like. Because, you can scroll past a ton of pretty pictures on Instagram, but you're not going to get the feeling of, oh, I just left my house in the morning and it took 5 minutes and I'm not stressed. That feeling is priceless.
So looking for a feeling instead of just, this is what everything looks like.
Yeah. Looking for the change in your life and feeling the ease and feeling the stress reduction. That's truly the goal.
So let me ask you this question, because we've all seen the pretty Pinterest pictures and the pretty Instagram pictures. And we watch the shows on TV that, an organizer comes in and then everything is like awesome looking. And I sit there going, and the first time they pull something out of that little drawer that you just overpacked, everything is going to come undone and then they're never going to put it back.
Yep.
How do you prevent stuff from completely unraveling and going back to the way it was?
Yeah. So couple aspects of that. First of all, when I work, the client is always on site. I do not come in and wave a magic wand and give them that like, whoa, aftershot. It makes for great TV. It does not make for great life.
Mhm.
So I'm having the client go through the belongings and talk to me about them. And that starts to trigger in my head. All right, so we need to have these things over here and those things over there. And these two things need to be together. And I'm starting to see, oh, we need this kind of container. Like it's already starting to happen in my head because I've worked with so many clients, like the patterns work in my head. Like for you, you've only seen your own home. So you don't
Mhm.
have all of these patterns that you can connect, but I can sort of go, okay, now I'm seeing how it comes together. And I'm building the system around the way this person already moves in their home.
Mhm.
So when they instinctively turn to grab something, it'll be there. As opposed to me saying, like, here is your new organizing scheme. And the thing that you usually turn this way for is going to be over here. That's
Mhm.
that's not helpful, right? And so, and then being there with me as I'm setting it up. And then always, when I finish an organizing system and like, I do use pretty containers and I do use labels, but I always give clients a very detailed tour of where stuff went. And I talk to them about like, remember how we talked about back at the beginning that you need these two items together? Here they are. And just
Mm.
making sure that they know. And especially when I'm working with one spouse in a family, I'll say, please make sure that you take your spouse and children through this tour as well, because you cannot expect them to be able to help you maintain the system if you don't show them how it works. I think we have this like idea in our heads that an organized space is like everyone knows what that is and everyone can just do it. And I'm here to tell you, everyone has a different definition of what an organized space is. And so you have to actually talk about, hey, we put the laundry detergent over here, not over here for this reason. And then everyone can go, okay. And then suddenly the laundry detergent starts ending up back where it goes. But if you don't talk about it and you just assume, then everybody starts getting really frustrated.
You just said something really important, and I want to unpack it because I don't want this session to end without us making a note of this. You just said you put something over there because, and there's usually a really good reason why we're moving this item to this place. Tell us about the explaining to a family member what the reason for that particular location is, other than just saying, because I like it there.
I said so. Yeah. No, I think something that we start to forget when we get frustrated is like our family members love us. They want the best for us. So if you say to somebody like, "Look, it's really going to work better for me if we move this thing over there because of this reason." I mean, it's a very not very nice person who's going to be like, "Too bad I don't like that." You know, most
Mhm.
people are going to say, "Oh, that's what's going to help you? Great. I am here for it." And if it doesn't work for them, maybe they'll say, "Oh, I see why that works for you. It doesn't work for me for this reason. Maybe we can find a third option."
I know in my house, we have large scissors in a particular office drawer, and my husband kept moving it to the kitchen. It doesn't go in the kitchen, it goes in the office. And he said, I want to keep it in the kitchen because if I ever open a big freezer bag of something, I like to
Mm,
cut it open because it doesn't. When I heard the because, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I
yes.
too have a hard time opening packages sometimes. Let's keep a pair of scissors inside this kitchen drawer. But as soon as I heard the because, neither
Yes.
of us ever went looking for scissors again. And I think that is really important what you said about the because and explaining to the family members why. Because
Yes.
once you understand the because, if you ever get confused, you can walk yourself through the story again and go, because he can't open packages of frozen stuff that is in those really thick packages unless you cut it open. That's the reason why. And you're like, oh, yes, that's why. Where did the scissors go? They go in that kitchen drawer, right? And then
Yeah.
everybody can put them back in the same exact place. Oh,
Yes.
love
I
this.
love
This
that.
is so good. Our time is running up. We've got a couple of
Ah,
questions here. I don't even know if we're going to be able to answer them all. Somebody says, haha, scissors. I have two pair also. I need the things where I need them. And that makes sense. I love that. Thank you. I can't clean effectively due to the clutter. I have to move things to clean around them. And it's so much
mhm.
harder than it needs to be. You know what? I'm so glad we had this conversation because I'm hoping this will, make life a little bit easier. Lucy, tell us about your clientele and tell us where our listeners can go to find you. And then I think we've got something free to leave with everybody as we close.
Yes, indeed. So I am based in San Francisco, and I see clients in person in San Francisco, also in Santa Barbara, and also at Lake Tahoe in California. But I work virtually nationwide, so you can find me at my website lmwedits.com, and you can find me on social media. Mostly Instagram, a little bit of YouTube. I'm now on Threads, that new thing too. All of it is at LMW Edits.
Awesome. And Lucy has some free resources for us today at lmwedits.com/free-resources. And I will leave links in the show notes to those so that you can access those in response to today's session, and then get to know Lucy better, because I have learned so much today and I've had so much fun. So I want to thank you guys.
Awesome.
I know. I want to thank you guys for showing up, and I want to thank you guys for your questions and your comments, and for just, believing in me. Like Lucy said, everybody needs somebody to believe in them. And I appreciate you guys believing in me, and I believe in you guys as well. And I want to remind you that you're not alone in this journey. And if you need help, it's okay to ask for help, because that's what all the professionals do. So please don't be ashamed. Don't think twice about it. If you need somebody like Lucy in your life, please give her a call. All right, that's it for today. I will see you guys same time, same place next week. Have a great week. And thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.